ModCons is all about showcasing modern conservatism, and what better way than speaking to the future of the party? For our new series, Candidates Cornered, I will be speaking with Conservative parliamentary candidates, starting with our general election 2024 intake. Today, I'm joined by Ed McGuinness. Ed, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jamila. Good to be here.
Awesome. So you stood in the general election 2024 as the parliamentary candidate for Surrey Heath, replacing legendary Conservative MP Michael Gove. Big shoes to fill. How did it feel? How did it go?
Yeah, I guess bottom line up front is it was brilliant. First, it's probably worth paying tribute to Michael. He was a phenomenal member of Parliament for Surrey Heath. Had a huge following there and had a really positive impact on that part of the country. And furthermore, as we can see from some of the lasting reforms that the last government did, particularly in terms of education, his legacy alongside some of his colleagues like Nick Gibb will live on for many years to come. Indeed, there is children who are soon to become adults who will be in much better position uh, going into their first careers because of the reforms that Michael and Nick push through. But in terms of filling those shoes in Surrey Heath, the association was hugely positive and really helped me and supported me throughout the short campaign. As we know, it was a pretty snap decision by the former Prime Minister, and it was a whirlwind of a 6 weeks. But it was really energizing. As you would imagine, and I know you were a candidate as well, it was exhausting but exhilarating, and it has to be because you need to have that passion to want to serve your constituents.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think enthusiasm goes a long way, and like people being able to see that you genuinely want to do it and you care to serve them, or at least to the best of your abilities, be a candidate, then I think you're right. They do kind of get behind you. So what made you want to stand? Why would you do this to yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question, and sometimes I get that question in hustings, or I think I got it in the selection meeting as well. But look, I grew up in Northern Ireland during the transition from the Troubles to a lasting but vulnerable peace. And it was really a political process that brought that about. It wasn't the violence that brought people to the table. It was people with a passion for their communities and a passion for peace that brought everyone around the table and led to that peaceful outcome. And so I have a real kind of visceral understanding of the power that politics can have. So politics isn't just sort of what's going on in the news or what's going on in your local council or what or these sorts of things, which are important. But a lot of people get frustrated with politics because it is slow, it is methodical, people's voices need to be heard. But when it actually truly works and gets behind an initiative to make people's lives better, like in Northern Ireland, it's hugely powerful. I guess growing up, I wanted to, or I recognized that, my country had given me a lot of opportunity, so I wanted to repay that and serve my country in some capacity. So I joined the military, and then after a couple of years in the military, including tours of Afghanistan and the like, I left and uh, I moved to an area where I wanted to serve my local community, and then I got involved with the Conservative Party. And when you're in the party, as you'll know, there's a lot of kind of encouragement to do a little bit more here and there, and to stand for election, and to get involved with initiatives and campaigns. And I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the feeling of achievement there. And so gradually that led me towards thinking about Parliament and shaping the national conversation. and coming right back to that very first point that I made, which is about a real passion that despite all the frustrations that people have with day-to-day politics, you really can make a difference when you apply yourself, and I wanted to serve in that capacity.
That's so true as well, what you say about the party getting behind you. I think people wouldn't realise how supportive the party is at all levels, and really does encourage people who, have a passion for it or maybe just have, a knack for speaking to people, campaigning, or whatever that might be, to actually push them forward. So yeah, it's really great that you kind of acknowledge that as well. So people also often ask me why I'm crazy enough to stand for Parliament, and especially in this social media age, of keyboard warriors, hobbyist trolls, and you've had your own experience with that during the campaign. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, I mean, just before I answer that, like what you're doing here is fantastic. Like this is great. Like people understanding what it takes to kind of get involved with public service and get involved with the Conservative Party. On social media, look, there's kind of a there's two elements to this. There's the first is kind of a little bit tongue in cheek in the sense that social media is there to be kind of entertaining, and is there to sort of grab people's attention, and that's important. But also, it's there to convey a message, and you also have to realize that it's kind of like when you're behind a keyboard and when you're behind a screen, it's like you've got body armor on and you feel invincible because no one can reach you. Now, for me, I kind of I feel like I've got a good perspective on life and what matters, and really people saying mean things to me on social media, on Twitter or Facebook or whatever is kind of water off a duck's back, right? I know that in real life, because I've met people who've been sort of aggressive to me on social media in real life, their bark is way worse than their bite. And that's kind of just the attitude you have to take. And in politics, I mean, like your social media is an essential tool of politics. There's no getting around it. We're no longer, despite what we might like to have happen. I'm afraid we're now in an age where social media is here to stay, and you can engage with it in as many healthy or unhealthy ways as you want. But when you go into this game, you just got to realize that you got to manage your own kind of profile, and there are ways to sort of screen bad things out if you're not happy with it. But you need to use it as a form of communication because uh, local newspapers are on the way out, so you can't necessarily write an article in a local newspaper, and the entire constituency will see it. Um, Knocking on every door is really important, but is hugely time consuming and resource consuming. Whereas if you can get a good social media platform, you can reach people really easily. And I'm on a Facebook group today, and it's not all that mean stuff that goes on that people sort of highlight. It's dedicated counselors informing people about issues with local services because of the weather. And that's also the power of social media. You can really help people in their day-to-day lives by just spreading good, factual, useful information. So net, I think it's a really good thing, but if you're going to go into this game, you just got to realize that it's a tool that's here to stay, and you've got to sort of be vigilant about how you use it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. I think it's kind of par for the course now, as sad as that might be. And I think you raise a really good point there about how like some parts of social media are really good for like community and sharing information. And I think obviously every platform is different. So like Instagram is much more like cuddly, Facebook perhaps a bit more information led, and a bit more of that community conversation going on. And then X is just like political beasts and news and trolls and just mayhem, which can also be a bit fun, but also a bit, scary at times. And I see from your, I like watching your ex or reading your ex because you've always got some interesting stories. And one of your recent stories was that former Conservative and now Reform UK member Tim Montgomery somehow managed to, get hold of your number and call you in the middle of the night to allegedly threaten you. So what on earth happened there? Obviously he was the founder of Conservative Home. Now he's moved over to Reform. What happened, Ed?
Yeah, it was a really strange situation, and I fully agree with the different platforms. They have a different kind of vibe, and I've just reactivated my Instagram. So if anyone wants to see any pictures of my cat Charlie, they can go on there. But I think, yeah, I mean that was a very strange situation. I I have a particular lack of understanding about defections and people that defect from political parties. I just don't really understand why you would spend so much time and effort over many, many years supporting a political party and then uh, you know moving away from that to a completely opposite position overnight, basically. And Tim Montgomery and I had a back and forth on X, and I thought very little more of it, and then I was lying in bed one evening and got this call. It wasn't from a withheld number or anything, so I was able to verify it, and it was him. And it was slightly strange call. I mean, it wasn't recorded, so he might say he said something slightly different, but it was essentially that he was outlining that he still had some support within our party, and for me to not for me to be nice, basically, to him on social media. And I sort of read it as be nice or else, your kind of career in the Conservative Party is over. And um you know uh I've got no reason to believe that is true. But if you're getting into a position where you're so invested that you're hunting out people's personal details to call them and have a sort of semi angry phone call with them about something that is kind of non-defamatory on a social media platform, then you're probably using that platform and getting invested in that platform a little bit too much.
I agree with you on that, and I think, yeah, I think it's when things cross off from online to offline that's always a bit hairy. And I know that I don't want to obviously labour the point, but I know you reached out to the Reform UK chairman, Zia Youssef, about it, and he hasn't responded as yet. I think he was replying to yourself for a little while, which is quite funny.
Yeah, look, I
Um,
mean,
but
yeah,
yeah,
the serious part of this is like, so let's look at if you the reason why I said that to Zia, the Reform chairman, is because they are making a lot of hay about the professionalization of their party. And the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, some of the other more established parties have all got processes in place to mean that prominent members of those parties uh, are held to account if they do things that are unacceptable. Not illegal, but unacceptable. So I wanted to highlight Zia, and obviously he's never got back to me, so whatever. But if they really want to be this professionalization and shout the rooftops about being a proper political party, then they need to have these structures in place,
yeah.
and they need to make sure that the people that they are recruiting into their party are people that are in keeping with the values of that party. And if they want those values to be, I'm going to phone up and sort of try to intimidate people in the middle of the night, then fair play, but that's not a party that I think anyone would ever vote for.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly the point, right? It's the fact that they're talking a very good game, and they have been since, October. Um, but when you scratch beneath the surface, they either can't handle any scrutiny or they're unwilling to hold each other to account. And I think that ultimately might be their unraveling. Well, I guess we'll only have to wait and see about that. But yeah, going back to, so-called conservatives defecting to other parties and things like that. Why are you a conservative? Why are you passionate about being a member of the Conservative Party? Why are you passionate about standing for the Conservative Party? Why do you do it?
It's two things. When I was growing up and sort of into my adulthood, my father would always watch the 6:30 local news. So national news would be on 6, and then we'd watch the local news. And he got increasingly frustrated that people in local news would always complain about, why aren't the government doing anything to fix this? What about where are the government on this? What's the government's role on this? And there's certain things that the government has to do, like defense and uh, bits of education and in our country, healthcare, things like that. But I sort of came to the conclusion that actually not everything in life requires government to create guidance and to police and to support, because some things the individual is better. And that feeds into sort of the second point, which is it is individual responsibility, but we are in a society and it is a bit of a team game as well. And when I was in the army, I saw firsthand what sort of pure aspiration is. So people would come in, individuals would come in with next to no qualifications. They would get trained up, they would get a bit of responsibility, and then they would flourish and become really good team members themselves. And there was one chap in my troop who fit exactly that bill, came from Glasgow, council estate, didn't have a GCSE to rub together. And sort of we trained him to be a junior gunner. So I was in the artillery, and that's what we called the junior soldiers. And then I left that unit and went to another unit, and then came back about 3 years later, and I was walking down the main road, and there's football pitches, and I saw this guy, and he was surrounded by 10, 15 other people. And I walked over, and I was sort of being a bit nosy, wondering what he was doing. And he was teaching them what we had taught him, 3 years before. So he had, made a life for himself, had a good career, was progressing in that career, was taking on leadership roles. And that's what I saw as aspiration. And when I left the military and got involved with politics, I really wanted to make sure that my principles were based um, on individual responsibility and aspiration, and that's what the Conservative Party sort of really speaks to with me. And those are the two sort of core values that mean that I really wanted to join and work with this party.
I'm totally with you there. Those are kind of the same for me. And I think sometimes people think that personal responsibility is like a punitive thing. It's actually saying we actually believe in you to be able to pull yourself out of whichever situation you're in and actually achieve something incredible. So I totally agree with you there. So that brings me to your army background. So you are director of the Conservative Friends of the Armed Forces, one of our fantastic affiliate groups. You also served in the British Army in Afghanistan, Kenya, and Canada. Can you tell us a bit more about what it was like to serve in places like Afghanistan, what your thoughts are on the current situation in the region now?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe just touching on your previous point, I think that's really important. It's about personal responsibility isn't about the abdication of the state. It's about empowering people to achieve much more than they could previously do. So, and when the state gets big, when the state sort of takes on more and more responsibility that it isn't equipped for, that diminishes the ability for people to achieve for themselves and their families. So that's a really important principle to understand. Just onto your second point about conservative friends in the armed forces. Um, anyone and everyone is welcome to join that group, whether you have a direct sort of connection to the armed forces or whether you're a supporter or interested in what we do. And I would say that just more broadly, like some of the friends groups, I know you're involved with Conservative Rural Forum. I know there's plenty of there's friends groups to cover all interests out there. And if that's your route into the party, if maybe joining an association or going to association events is not really for you, then these friends groups are really good. And often, if you come to conference, they're one of the better kind of events to go to in terms of socializing and things like that. So, if you're interested in rural affairs or America or Ukraine, then there's all sorts of these different groups that you can join. But look, my time in the army was brilliant. I would recommend it to anyone. It's the like I said, it's probably the I've never been in any other kind of public service career, but I would say it's probably the public service career where you can really aspire most effectively, because it really is a meritocracy. Especially when you go on operations and you're really focused on one particular mission and going to Afghanistan and leading soldiers out there in terms of the protection of the bases we were drawing down was a real honor and to have a play even a small role in that was hugely important. I was as a lot of my colleagues were when Afghanistan fell back in 2021, I think. We were devastated, and I think we still are. And to see the Taliban take over the country and what they've done in terms of, particularly in terms of women's rights and education, is a real tragedy. But what I would say is that what we did there was not in vain. There are there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people in the south of the country, in particular, in terms of British forces, who can now read. They are they're articulate, they're educated, they have had some development, um, and actually, the potential of this country is probably in the medium to long term. I think this is still correct, but over 50% of the population are under 18, so there's a huge amount of young people in the country who are, not to be too cliche, who are the future of Afghanistan, and they'll have grown up mostly without knowing what it's like to live under the rule of the Taliban. So as that kind of progresses through the system, hopefully there can be some reform within that country. But it is a really tough puzzle to crack, and um, this has been it's been a country that's been very, very complex for many centuries. So it'll always be a difficult area of the world.
It has been a real shame how things have turned out, but there is hope. So what are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I mean, politically, look, it's a really good point in the cycle, actually, because there's a lot of time now before the next election to really put in some groundwork. So, obviously, what I didn't mention when you asked me about Surrey Heath, and I probably should have done, is that I didn't win the seat in Surrey Heath. But that is a really, really important seat, and Surrey in the southeast are really important areas for the party to focus on in the next election, because those are the seats that we have always held when we've been in government, and also they're the seats that have uh, some of the most economically active parts of the country in them. So it's important that we continue to focus on Surrey and Hampshire and uh, Kent and London even and other parts of the southeast. So working in those areas and supporting those areas is something that I'm really keen on, and I'm really keen to use the experience that I learned during the general election to continue to fight for not just the people of Surrey Heath, which is important, but also the wider community. We've had some support uh, in that area in terms of the hospital, Fernley Park Hospital, which we did a big petition on to save, which I'm glad to say has been saved and will be rebuilt, and other really important issues in that area as well. So I think continuing those sort of campaigns is really important. But anyone else out there who's interested in becoming a candidate or interested in getting involved with the party, I'm keen to help as well. This process can be a little bit murky at times. It can be difficult. It can be fraught with setbacks, even at sort of the final hurdle. And we are all a massive support network.
We are like a big family, and which I always it's always why I find it so sad when we lose people. But we're always getting new people, and going around the country, you hear about people who've rejoined the party or are new members. So there's so much excitement again. And also, shout out Surrey Heath, one of my favourite places to campaign. Everyone's so nice. Everyone's so
Mm.
the
It's
door.
a great area. It's it's got everything. It's got superb towns like Camberley, lovely villages like Pirbright and Normandy. It's got amazing kind of cutting edge industry like the bio industry with the Pirbright Institute. It's got the front gates of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, the full spectrum of society. It's really like an amazing part of the country, and I'm sure every other MP or candidate will say the same about the area that they represent or that they're in. But I think Surrey Heath is fantastic, and to your point, the people are just brilliant. The best thing about, if I can just go sort of a little bit deeper, the best thing about the election, or one of the best things about the election, was just the privilege that you get meeting people on the doorstep, and within 10 seconds they're telling you some of their most intimate problems or concerns, but also you get to do some amazing stuff. And one of the best things I did was I went to visit alongside the Liberal Democrat candidate who's now the MP. I went to visit the a an organization that helps provide activities for adults with special educational needs, and it was the best day I had on the campaign trail. Um, the passion that the sort of volunteers put in, the support that they're given from the community, the the fun, and basically the fun that they all have is just amazing. And sort of this was a couple of days before polling day, so it was a very busy time. Um, but just to see what what people are doing in a community that often goes kind of unseen, but is hugely beneficial to uh to people's lives is just an incredible privilege.
Campaigning, there's nothing better than like knocking on someone's door and actually having a conversation with someone. And you're right, people are very open, and they will always, I always find it so easy to know what to do because people are very happy to tell you what the issues are and what you need to do to kind of make their lives easier. And in terms of being a candidate, whether you're a councillor, whether you're an MP, whether you're, serving in other ways in your community, be it governor or whatever that might be, you're right. You do get such a window into seeing how much hard work is going on in the community that you would just not know about if you were just going about your average day,
Mhm.
and not engaging in that way. So no, it's you're right. It's a real privilege. And so obviously we're both Conservative candidates, members, whatever we are these days. We've got a new leader. We've got some really exciting, or she's actually released a video recently saying that the year ahead is going to be fantastic and there's more to come. So I'm very excited. And what to you does the future of the Conservative Party look like? Where do you think we need to be in the next, 4 years or so? And what gives you hope?
I like to consider the Conservative Party like a little bit of a boat, or a big boat, or a large ship, or whatever other analogy you want to bring into it. And we've got a new captain now, and we're slowly sort of coming out of the storm of the general election, and we have some distance to go before we reach our destination. And we need to be patient. And anyone who's ever been sailing will know that weather and events can buffet you and impact you, and sometimes throw you off course. But if you have a good captain and a good team, and everyone sort of pulls in the same direction, then you ultimately reach that destination. We're only about 10% of the way through this parliament, and if we continue to do the basics well, get the basics right, sort out all our internal party structures, which is something that we have the time and space to do in opposition, then we'll be in a really, really good position to fight the next election, and we can win the next election, because those long-term issues, if Labour get a second term in power, or if we've got some sort of hung parliament, then those will become embedded, and we can't allow that to become embedded. So take the time now, get the ship in good order, and then we'll all sort of sail in the right direction.
Love the fact that you came back to the ship analogy there. That was beautifully done. And my last question for you, Ed, is, everything going as it should, and you're an MP, you're on the green benches. What is the kind of one policy area, or one kind of mission? What would you like to change? What would you like to achieve, as a parliamentarian if you get the chance?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think um, for me, it's about um, education, and particularly in terms of education, I'd like to see civics taught in schools. So that's a policy area I'm really kind of passionate about. And the reason for that is I never got taught civics in school. I never got taught sort of how government works, what government does, which part of government is responsible for what. So then, and I don't think really it's taught in any kind of robust way early on in schools. And so what that means is that the first time people really have a an engagement with politics is when they turn 18 and they get to go in and vote. And if they're going into council election, they need to know what the council is responsible for, and how it works, and how it engages with national government, and vice versa, so they can make that informed decision. And the reason why I think it's really important is because, again, during the general election, I got one of the other great things I got to do was go into a local school and do a hustings with the sixth formers, and some of the more senior, sort of lower sixth classes. And obviously, one of the questions that came up was, should we have votes for 16-year-olds? And it's been a long-standing Conservative policy that we shouldn't, for a number of different reasons. But those sixth formers and those school kids were really informed about how government worked, because extracurricularly they did some studying with their sort of schoolmaster, and sort of debated these things through and thought about them, and they were really informed. And I want to see that across the board, because then I think we'd have people that engage more with democracy, who understand more about how the democratic process works, understand sort of the responsibilities of the prime minister versus the responsibilities of their councillors. And I think it would just make our democratic life a lot richer. And I think if you're going to be part of society, then society has to kind of, as a child, has to equip you with what you need. And I think knowing how to count and read is equally as important as knowing how to engage with the democratic process that ultimately decides how future generations will be educated and will be able to count and read like you did. So yeah, civics in school is one of the major kind of policy areas that I'm interested in.
I think that's spot on. And I think it's something that we definitely, I find it so baffling that it isn't already in the curriculum as a kind of, mandated thing. And you'd be shocked how many people don't know what the council do, what the different levels of council do. And I didn't really know that much about the local council and what councillors do until I got involved in politics. And I know a lot of friends and friends of friends don't either. So I think you're right. And in terms of 16-year-olds, I think they could vote if they knew more about what they were voting for, because there are a lot of 20-year-olds who don't have a clue or 40-year-olds who don't have a clue. So I totally agree with you on that. And I think that's something we should definitely take up.
Well,
But I,
when you're an MP and I'm an MP, then we can
yeah,
co-sponsor the bills and then we can get it done.
let's do it. I will back you. Ed, thank you so much for your time today. Honestly, I really, really appreciate it. A conservative supporting another conservative. I love to see it. Thanks so much for joining us on ModCons today.
Thanks, Jamila. You're doing great work. And yeah, anything I can do to support, let me know.
Thank
Thank you.